If you're a federal worker facing a RIF and you're trying to decide between a VERA, VSIP, DSR, or separation payments, you're in the right place. So in previous videos, I've talked about VERAs, VSIPs, DSRs, and how much separation payments you'd be entitled to if you're let go in a RIF. However, there's one thing that I should have mentioned in those videos that we'll go over now, which is don't do anything that would disqualify you from being eligible for those. So let's start with the obvious. RIFs generally are required to give you 60-day notices if they do it, and under certain conditions they can knock that down to 30 days. The current administration tried to do away with both those requirements and just fire a bunch of people anyway, and that went to court and got overturned, and a lot of people were hired back. So now they have to start from box one and follow the rules, but rather than do the 60 days, they're probably going to try to break the rules and go with the 30 days. So your option when dealing with that stuff is to either comply and file a grievance or not comply, and you're sort of giving them what they want, which is laying the groundwork for them to get rid of you and not give you a separation payment or not give you the DSR and other things that you'd be entitled to in a RIF. So don't let them do that to you. Your best bet, if they're doing something which they shouldn't do, is to comply and then file a grievance. Don't resist and get yourself fired, because then things like separation payments and DSRs, you wouldn't get those. So I'll give you some examples. In my prior agency, they had a collective bargaining agreement with 2 days of telework. They're requiring everyone to come into the office 5 days a week because they're trying to get people to quit. So even though you have a collective bargaining agreement that says 2 days a week, if you stop coming in, that would give them grounds to say you're being disobedient, you're being whatever, and start the process to fire you, and then you wouldn't get what you'd be entitled to. So don't do that. Coworkers that I know have been coming in the 5 days a week, and they're going to file a grievance, and they're sort of doing passive-aggressive resistance. So, they still have meetings, but even if the person is in the next office, they're just coming in, closing the door, and they're still doing meetings on team. They're not, giving management what they want, which is to have these in-person meetings. And actually, my agency is moving to a new location, and if they did in-person 5 days a week, they would only have enough room for 80% of the people. So, they're just trying to do things to make it uncomfortable for you to quit. Don't quit. You're entitled to a lot if you're terminated in a RIF, DSR, separation payments, things like that. And if you are fired, you don't get that, so don't let them fire you. So if I was there, I would comply and file a grievance. I wouldn't do anything to get myself fired. So we're going to look at a few things today, and this is a presentation that was done apparently by OPM to managers to help them understand how to do the RIF process and try not to get overturned by a court. And I found this online, and I'm going to link to it in the description so you can refer to it. And I'll also put another copy of things I put in other videos, like the Workforce Reshaping Operations Handbook and the Discontinued Service Retirement thing from OPM. So you can take a look at it. But generally, as I said, RIFs 60 days notice, and they'll probably try to do something scammy and only give you 30 days and claim that it's a special circumstance, even though it's not. But, as I said, just go along, and you can file a grievance after and maybe get your job back. But, if you get yourself fired, it's going to be harder to do that. So the main thing you have to look out for, besides them forcing you to resign or doing something where they're able to fire you, is if they make you a reasonable offer. So if your agency goes through a RIF, they're going to keep some people and get rid of some people, and the people that will remain, some will stay in their positions. So obviously you'd have to stay, but if they try to move you to a different position, that reasonable offer kicks in. So what's a reasonable offer? So if it is the same agency, that's one of the things that would have to happen. It would have to be in the same agency, but if your agency is merged with another agency, that's considered the same agency. So if you're at the SEC and they try to move you to the FTC, that doesn't count. But, if you're at the Office of Controller of the Currency and they try to merge that with FDIC and it becomes one agency, and they try to move you to this new agency, then that would be considered a reasonable offer because it's the same agency. It would have to be a similar job. So they couldn't move you from being an attorney to an economist because they're two completely different skill sets. But, a attorney doing one thing to an attorney doing something else, if it's still the same skill set, they can offer you that job. And if it's in the same agency, the same geographic commuting area, and it's a reasonable job offer with a reasonable salary, then you'd have to take that. So as I said, they couldn't give you a job that you're not qualified for, but a similar job at the same agency, they could. And the way that's going to work is they will come up with a list of positions that they want to keep, positions they want to get rid of, and then they're going to score everyone according to your prior military service, how long you've been in the government, and your performance rankings. And then based on that, they'll decide who will be kept and who will be gotten rid of. And if you will be kept, but maybe not in your position, you have certain rights called bump and retreat. So if you're in a certain position, but you had a previous position before, and you have this very high number because, either prior military service or you've been in the government a long time and have very high performance ratings, you may be allowed to go to a prior position you had that's called a retreat. Or if there's a position that you qualify for, but somebody else has it and they have a lower number, you might be able to bump them. That's called a bump. So I'm not going to go into all the specifics of that, but that's just how that works. And that is something you should keep in mind when determining a reasonable offer. And as I said, if you disagree with something, if I was in your position, I would comply and file a grievance. I wouldn't refuse because, you're giving them the sort of ammunition that for them to do what's necessary to start to fire you, and then you wouldn't get severance, you wouldn't get a DSR, and you want to do everything you can to get it. And the best way to get it is to don't step on any of the landmines. So, as I said, that's some of the basics of the reasonable offer. And I mentioned, the same agency, same commuting distance, a job that's similar to the one you had. And it might have been, if it's a retreat, a job that you had before. If it's a bump, a job somebody else has that is similar to your job. And I mentioned the pay has to be similar. So what does that mean? Well, they can give you a job within 2 grades of what you have now. So it can be 2 grades lower, and that's considered a similar job, but they would have to give you the same pay for 2 years. So if you are at the job you are at now, and you've held that position for 52 weeks for 1 year, then they can move you to a similar job that's up to 2 grades lower, and you would have to take that if everything else was met, same agency, same geographic area, and stuff like that. But even though it's 2 grade levels less, if you had your prior job for 52 weeks, they would have to keep you at your same salary for 2 years, even though it's 2 grades lower. And then after 2 years, they would decide what to do with that. Would you get whatever the current salary is? Would you have qualified to move up? Because generally you move up in grades after 12 months or 24 months, depending. So yeah, 2 grades lower. But if the current job you're in, you've had for 52 weeks, when they move you 2 grades lower, you're still going to get the same pay for at least 2 years. And why is that important? Because as I said in other videos, your retirement pension is based on your high 3. So if they're going to RIF you and they move you to this new position and you're going to get the same salary that you had for another 2 years, that means your salary now times 3 is going to be your high 3. So that's something to consider, right? So don't decline any reasonable offers. Don't refuse to do things that like come in even though you have a telework agreement or collective bargain agreement. Just comply and file a grievance. There's so many people that are going to be doing that. They're going to be caught up in lawsuits for a long time, but don't refuse that. Just don't step on a landmine. You're at the 10-yard line. You're about to score. Just don't do anything to ruin that. And after you if you decline a reasonable offer, sorry, let me pull that up right here. See, if we look at Chapter 44 in the discontinued service retirement, and just to recall, everything that you would get in a VERA if you're over 20 years of service and 50 years of age, or any age and 25 years of service, if you're let go in a RIF, you would get the same thing in a DSR, a discontinued service retirement. But if they let you go and you turn down a reasonable offer, they don't have to give it to you, right? So what's a reasonable offer? Has to be in writing, has to be something that you qualify for, same agency, same geographic area, and similar pay. And some of this other stuff is just very esoteric, but if you're working full-time, it would have to be a full-time position. They can't offer you a part-time if you're full-time, or full-time if you're part-time, or vice versa. If you're Schedule A, they have to offer you another Schedule A if you're accepted, things like that. It has to be the same. But yeah, if they made you a reasonable offer, you wouldn't get DSR. If they did not make you a reasonable offer and they RIF you, then you would get this DSR if you are over 20 years of service and 50 years of age, or over 25 years of service. You would get the same thing you would get in a VERA. If you have less than that and they did not make you a reasonable offer, then you would get the severance pay that we talked about in a previous video. If they did make you a reasonable offer and you turned down the reasonable offer, and then they RIF you because you turned down the reasonable offer, you wouldn't get any of this. So as I said, don't step on that landmine. You can accept what they think is a reasonable offer, and if you don't think it's a reasonable offer, you can file a grievance, and then you might win, and then they would offer you the VERA or DSR or separation payments. But if you turn down what they think is a reasonable offer, then you're stepping on the landmine. So the other stuff here about the offer having to be in writing and all that other stuff, you definitely want all the boxes checked, because if they did not make you a reasonable offer and it was a RIF and they sent you written notice and stuff like that, there's a form, I think it's 1510, which you have to give to OPM along with all the documentation that you were let go in a RIF, you weren't fired, they did not make you a reasonable offer, which you declined, so that you touched all the bases that you need to get the home run. They're going to ask for that in the form when they process your paperwork. And if something's not there, then, like the offer wasn't in writing, you knew they were doing RIFs, so you resigned, you thought they were doing something which was not under your collective bargaining or violated some other work protocol, and rather than comply and do a grievance, you refused and you were fired for insubordination. Those are things that will put you out of the running, but just make sure that you have all those boxes checked, so that if you don't get a reasonable offer and you're RIFed, you will be entitled to all the severance that you're entitled to, or a DSR if you're retirement age, or a VERA or VSIP if they offer it to you. So you want to make sure, as I said, that they complied with everything in terms of the written offer. You want to make sure that they comply with everything and everything's in writing, so that if you did accept a reasonable offer, you're fine. And if they didn't make you a reasonable offer, that you have everything in place to get everything you're entitled to. Okay, so good luck with that. If you want to support the channel, there's a Buy Me a Coffee link. I'll try to do more videos. If you put specific questions in there, I'll try to do a video if it's too long to answer in the comments, and I'll just give the typical disclaimer. This isn't legal advice. I'm a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer, and I'm not even an employment lawyer. I'm a retired federal employee, and I have ADHD and an internet connection, and I know people have a lot of questions about this. So I did my research, and I'm putting what is my understanding of it online, and I'll put the source material there so you can look at it yourself and decide for yourself which of the scenarios applies to you and which one don't. And, I'm just trying to help. I'm not trying to take anybody's job here. I don't work as an employment lawyer, and I have no desire to, but I know some of you had very specific questions that a employment lawyer should answer, and I can't answer, and I'm one step ahead of you. So I have a couple of friends who are not employment lawyers, but know people who are, and I reached out to a couple of them, and I may do a post with a guest who's an employment lawyer, if I can get one of them to agree to do it. And if so, I'll ask whatever questions you guys have. So put questions that you have in the comments, and if I can get one of them to agree to do it, I will ask them the specific questions, and maybe we can get one of them on in a live stream. I don't know, and then you can ask questions as we go. I know somebody did ask me questions about if you have a disability and reasonable accommodations and stuff like that. And I felt like that's not something I would find in these documents and not something that I'd be able to speak on. So I'd like to get an actual employment attorney on there to ask them that, and how that would be affected in terms of the reasonable offer that they make you. Like if you can't come in because you have a physical disability or something like that that prevents mobility, and they're requiring you to come to the office, how would that affect what is a reasonable offer or not? So as I said, no guarantees yet, but I do have two people that I'm reaching out to. And if I can get one of them to come on, I'll answer whatever questions you guys put in the comment. Or if I can get one of them to agree to do a live show, maybe we'll do another live show. But anyway, like and subscribe because I'll put out more videos. And as I said, this is just about things not to do, but if you have specific questions about the DSR, I did a previous video on DSR. If you have a question about VERA and VSIP, I did another video just on VERA and VSIP. And I think I did one just on the separation payments and how much you'd be entitled to. So look those up. And if you have specific questions, put them in the comments. And I'm going to link to all these materials, which are the Workforce Reshapement Handbook, this PowerPoint that OPM did to brief the managers at your agency on how to go through this process and not end up in court, and this chapter 44 of the discontinued service retirement, and this one on reassignments. So these are all OPM source materials, and I would believe this over anything that the Department of Government Efficiency, Doggy, or Douche, because it's named after Elon Musk, I wouldn't trust anything they say, but these are source materials, and I think you can look at that, and if you have a specific question, see how it's addressed in these source materials, and then you can talk to your union rep or you can talk to a lawyer, and you sort of have a better understanding. So anyway, as I said, like and subscribe, and I'll try to do another video soon with an actual employment lawyer. And if you have specific questions about any of this stuff, just put it in the comments. If you want to support the channel, there's a buy me a coffee, but don't feel like you have to. And good luck out there. I know things are crazy, and we live in crazy times, and people are saying horrible things about you, trying to get you to quit, but that's what they want. Don't let them make you quit. You're entitled to severance. You're entitled to a DSR. You should get a VERA or VSIP or anything like that. And, if you're entitled to that for having worked there, you should get what you're entitled to and not have some crazy billionaire who's high on ketamine and screaming on stage with a chainsaw and doing Nazi salutes deny you of what you deserve. Anyway, good luck out there, and we'll catch up soon. Thanks.